Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back with another episode of Daily Palantir. We are here on the first day of trading in 2024, and we had a little bit of a red day, not just for Palantir, but for the broader equity markets. So we're going to be discussing that on today's show. Number one, we're going to be talking about Palantir down below $17, down 3.4% of the day. Haven't seen below 17 since November 2nd, so got a lot to talk about in terms of some of the price action there. Number two, we have two new Palantir FedStart partners. FedStart, Palantir's new product offering for startups that are looking to sell into the government. Two new partners. We had 9 before. 2 new that were added on, so we're going to be discussing those 2 partners. Third, we're going to be talking about Palantir and the NHS. New data came out for people that could opt out of the NHS, and the data is very shocking in terms of the people that chose to not opt out of giving their data to the NHS, which is one of the biggest fears for Palantir before they got the contracts. We're going to discuss that. And then finally, at the end of this video, I did a podcast with someone a couple of days ago who is deeply knowledgeable about Palantir in the government space. I'm going to attach about a 7 to 8 minute clip from that interview. You can watch the full podcast as well. But in that clip, we discuss some new things that Palantir has been working on since 2021 that are starting to become much more relevant today, primarily because of the issues we're having with supply chains and the potential, software platforms Palantir is working to solve some of those issues. Let's get into it. Second Daily Palantir episode of 2024. Let's do this. All right, so I think first thing we got to do is obviously discuss, price action. Palantir, here you go. $16.60 in the pre-market. It's up about 0.12%, or after hours up 0.12%, down 3.4% on the day. So as you can see, we fell down. It's pretty red. We are indeed red. There's nice red candles all throughout the entire day. I thought the dip was getting eaten up a little bit when it was at 1650. Then it spiked racked up to 1690, and then it came right back down to 1658. Why did this happen? Look, at the end of the day, I think the main reason this happened is because the market is getting to a point where 2023 was very exciting. 2023 was very good for individual equities. Palantir was up 160% towards the end of the year. And at some level, you need a breather. I mean, it's just natural at some point that there is going to be a breather. And this has really nothing to even do about Palantir potentially being overvalued or the multiple or anything like that. This was just one of those sell-offs where it's like the algorithms that control the mighty market said, we are going to take a break because all we have done is go up for the past 2 months, really since November. And it's time for us to chill down a little bit. So we have not seen sub $17 until since November 2nd. So November 2nd, we were at $14.80, or November 1st, we were at $14.80 right before earnings. We had earnings. We spiked all the way up to $16.70, $17, and then we ran to $21.85. And that's when you had a lot of insider selling, a lot of institutional selling, and it came all the way back down to 17. However, we held 17 for a pretty long time, really for the past month. And every time it was even getting close to being below 17, it would just spike back up to 1740, 1750. Today was the day that it finally broke through. 10-year went a little bit higher, not 4%, but inching higher to that 4% level. And overall, you had a lot of different equities, Meta, Amazon, Tesla, Google, all these companies sold off today. Bitcoin getting to its highest levels that it's been in since April 2022, but not enough to really be able to carry Palantir. Overall thoughts on price action? Look, I mean, I've been saying this publicly for a long time. If we get to 15, I would be willing to buy a lot more. I did buy like 25 shares today at the 1670 price. So, that's fine. I've got some money ready for much more bigger buys closer to that 15 level. But in general, this to me was a very basic sell-off, a very natural sell-off. Nothing fundamental happened in order to trigger the sell-off. And I would imagine if the entire market is red, then you would get a company like Palantir that, the growth is not really there to fully justify the multiple yet. I believe that will happen, but a company like them, they're going to be susceptible to that sell-off as well. So that's why the stock sold off today. Now, outside of the stock selling off, we also had some other interesting news. Let's start off with this NHS news, because I thought this was incredibly interesting. So this came out from Nicholas Carding, who's a senior correspondent for HSJ News in London. They obviously cover what's going on with the NHS, all the technology, product, and updates. And this was the December data that came out today for how many people opted out of data sharing to the NHS after Palantir was awarded the new $480 million contract. They were awarded it late November, so December, this is where the data came out. Only 20,000 people opted out. So the major fears that advocacy groups had were that massive amounts of people would not share data with the NHS, and obviously if there's no data with the NHS, then Palantir is not valuable because the whole point of the federated data platform is to use the data in a meaningful way. But it turns out people just want better healthcare. So as you can see right here, in June 2021 and August of 2021, you had about 3 million people opting out of the NHS data sharing, primarily for GDPR rules that the NHS passed. I'm not super familiar with why that triggered that much of a opt-out response, but there were a lot more regulations that were passed about 3 years ago where people just felt they didn't want the NHS having all that data. If you then look, it's pretty much flat for the rest of the preceding months. And then December 2023, we do see a spike up of 20,000 people that have opted out, but 20,000 people opting out is just not a lot of people opting out of, 40, 50 million people that are using the NHS. Now, one thing to point out here is that a lot of the people using the NHS likely couldn't opt out of actually giving their data to Palantir for the federated data platform, because that's one of those things that Palantir made it very clear that they needed, or the NHS made it very clear that they needed from people. But you were allowed to opt out of sharing your data for research and development, which is still a very significant thing, because if your data is not being used for R&D, it makes it a lot more harder for Palantir in collaboration with the NHS to build some really sophisticated products, some good technology, and to be able to subsidize a lot of the research that they're trying to be able to do. So to even see 20,000 people opt out of that, even if they can't fully opt out of the NHS data platform, I thought was very, very nice. I mean, you would have expected millions of people to have opted out of this because they were so afraid of big, bad, scary Palantir that's going to take everything and ruin their company and ruin their healthcare. It's like, nope, that didn't happen. Like, no one really cared. Like, either no one cared about this, which is reasonable, or people just had come to the conclusion that, look, the NHS has been kind of not as good as we were promised it was going to be for the past 3 decades. You have loved ones that need to get some type of treatment or pay or be able to get the surgery that they need, and there's these wait times and these backlogs, and they were like, you know what? Even if Palantir is the most unethical company in the world, which again is a stretch, let's just give them a shot and see what they can do. So I think those are 2 conclusions. I think number 1, a lot of people are like, you know what, we really don't care at the end. Like, I don't know the back end operating system when I go to get a doctor's visit that is handling all of my data. I don't know the name of it. I frankly don't care about the name of it as long as it gets the job done. So I think that's one part of it. And number 2, it's like, even if I was concerned because the mainstream media is telling me that this company's horrible, if they can fix what they're saying they're going to try to fix, I would give them a shot. And if they can't fix it over time, then we'll readjust. But if they can, then maybe it's worth the gamble. So from that perspective, I think it was really, really exciting for Palantir to be able to make sure they not only got this deal, but as they got this deal, the people that they needed to not opt out of the deal at the tunes of millions did not opt out of the deal. You had 20,000 people that are like, you know what, we don't feel comfortable with this. 20,000 is a drop in the bucket in the broad scheme of the amount of data Palantir is going to be able to generate from all these people that are opting in to presenting, or at least not opting out to present their data to the NHS. And they're going to likely be able to build a lot more products on top of that. All right, so next thing I want to discuss is some new FedStart partners that we got. Shout out to Lord Grimm, great Palantir Twitter account on this. We used to have 9 partners. Now it seems like we have 11. We got Lilt, which is a translation and localization company, and Rizkly, a defense and space manufacturing company, now partnered on Palantir FedStart. So here are their 2 websites. Just wanted to show this to you guys very quickly. The Lilt is advanced AI-powered translation technologies for government agencies. Translate content quickly and accurately at scale with Lilt. So Lilt provides translation technologies for defense, federal, civilian agencies, intelligence, law enforcement, state and local governments. And it seems like they have already worked with In-Q-Tel, the Department of Justice, U.S. Air Force, Department of Defense, etc. Apparently, advanced AI-powered translation technology is important. You have to translate content quickly and in a meaningful way, and there is an AI-powered solution for that, and that's where Lilt comes into place. And then you've got Rizkly, which is a cybersecurity company, essentially. They offer cybersecurity compliance certainty, management platform, expert assistance, growth confidence, compliance management, the way you envisioned it, essentially providing a comprehensive data privacy compliance platform that allows firms to meet growing requirements around how to protect their data and keep it in the right way. And there's obviously a governmental part of their business that they offer to the government. Why is this super important? Well, more partners for FedStart means that the more contracts Rizkly or Lilt gets, whether it's in the US government or other governments across the world, the more Palantir is able to not only take a fee for being able to connect them with different partners, because that's a little bit of how the business model works, but also able to guide them to be able to get different contracts so that they can then refer other potential partners for FedStart to Palantir, because Palantir was able to get them accredited, Palantir was able to get them containerized within their software, and Palantir was ultimately able to get them to be able to meet the right people when it came to selling their software into the government. The more partners we have on FedStart, the better it is for Palantir, because we need a lot more partners. It's a phenomenal product. I'm very bullish on where defense tech is going over the next decade, but we do need more partners. Right now we're at 9. We launched this around June, so it would be nice to see that start doubling and tripling and get to close to 50 partners. There's a lot of companies that want to sell to the government. The government has a lot of money and wants to deploy into this software, especially new defense tech companies. but you need the right requirements to be able to do that. Having more and more partners that do different things like AI translation of content. I didn't even know that was a thing that governments need. It's a thing that government needs because AI is everywhere, and they're like, hey, this can be more efficient and effective, and if it's more efficient and effective, then potentially the government could buy it. But you need Palantir's actual containerization of that software in order for it to make sense. So 2 new partners for FedStart, which seemingly should result in either more clients for Palantir next quarter, at least 2 more, or potentially a little bit more revenue coming in from those 2 clients that are going to help get their products sold into the government, because Palantir is going to allow them to as well. All right, last thing I'm going to show you guys in this episode is an interview I did with awesome guy named Adam. Some of you guys may have seen this interview. Some of you guys may have not. Adam goes by Twitter symbol, Palantirs_Palantir. I was like ticker symbol, like we're stock. And we talked about a lot of things. We spent 30 minutes talking about space and Palantir's opportunity to land some massive space contracts. I'll probably be talking about that and summarizing that a little bit more in later interviews or later episodes. But we talked about one element of Palantir's commercial growth that people aren't talking about, which is disruption within semiconductors and supply chains, particularly because of the things that are going on with Taiwan and a variety of different things. And Palantir came up with a platform in collaboration with Merck GA back in December of 2021 called Athenia. Some of the OG members that were keeping up with all the PRs might remember it. A lot of people might not remember it. Here's about 10 minutes of us talking about that platform, why it's so important, and why Adam in particular is bullish about that being one of the hidden gems of where commercial growth could come from going into 2024. So take a look at this, and that'll be all for today's episode. And then tomorrow we'll be back at it with a bunch of different things that we're going to talk about in regards to Palantir. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one, and take a look at this clip. Full interview is linked in the description.
My secret commercial prediction.
Oh, let's go into that. All right, so let's transition to that. So kind of give me the rundown of what you think is happening for commercial. So like the bear case right now is commercials growing at 30% US growth, which is awesome, but internationally it's trash. Overall 17% year-over-year growth. We don't really have a great conversion on the boot camps yet, not that we know of. Customer count has been stagnant, 8% quarter over quarter. How does commercial change? I guess give me the bull case, bear case for you in 2024.
Well, the bear case, in my honest opinion, would be if growth maintains how it is now, even if it continues growing at this, 2025. I don't think that's justifiable to be the multiple that we all want. I think we need to get back to 35, 40, and it will happen, in my opinion. That would be the bear case. And the bull case would be, they convert, 30, 40, 50% of these AIP contracts. They start extracting value from them immediately, and they can start hitting their expand phase quicker. That's the other main thing is, if it took them 18 months to acquire, now it's down to 5 days, they can quote unquote hit the expand and scale phase within 18 months. So that's really it. But my big thing for 24 from a commercial side, and I think it's going to surprise a lot of people, is, and I'm going to divide it up into 2. Outside the US and inside the US. And I'll start with outside the US. Asia. Specifically Taiwan. And I'm not even talking on the defense side.
Talk to me. All right, talk to me.
And I think a lot of people don't realize this, and I think a lot of people are going to research this after we're done here today, is the Athenia platform. Now, I don't know, and many people are probably saying, what the hell is he talking about? So Palantir built on Foundry Athenia, which is a platform for semiconductors. If you pull up the Athenia page, it talks about the importance of semiconductors, the supply chain. Then it talks about building with the ontology developer, software engineer kit, whatever it might be. So, this
was the Merck KGA one. I remember December 2021, this one came out, and no one thought much of it because we didn't think that much about semiconductors or Taiwan and China. Now everyone's thinking about semiconductors.
Correct. So I have a feeling it's going to be a massive, massive market for them in 24 is Athenia platform. One of the gentlemen that I follow or speak with on Twitter, I will leave his name out for security reasons because I'm convinced he's 007 CIA. He's probably watching me now. But we speak very, very frequently. And the head of Palantir Asia, and you guys can Google his name. His name is Barrett Brown. He's not Asian, but he actually opened up a Palantir office in Taipei about 2 years ago. But more importantly, he was in Taipei yesterday.
How do you know this? LinkedIn?
No, I'm hoping my source is right. That's why he was tracking.
Dude, this is why this stock is gonna make us all rich, because no random people are spending their time getting sources trying to figure out this shit in the retail community, other than
they were. If you must know, my very good fellow investor, he was tracking his plane. So,
which is all public data. That's not, that's all out there. Yeah.
Right. Just like patents are public data. You just have to know where to look. So I really think from a commercial side, I think people are going to be very surprised with semiconductors, with Athenia. There you go. It was deep value there.
Oh, deep value. Of course, it was deep value. So what do you think Athenia is going to, do you think there's going to be more semiconductor disruption that's happening throughout supply chains, and that's where Athenia could pick up some contracts in Asia?
Yeah, I think Athenia is just going to be massive in Asia, just specifically because of Taiwan. But I'm thinking Athenia overall on a global scale, just because you saw it at it was only a couple months ago, I think, but the Biden administration, they gave Intel that massive tax rebate thing for that huge foundry chips program that Intel was building stateside. So, and they work with Intel, Palantir. So, and I think now, especially the last 5 years, from a intelligence community standpoint, microchips and semiconductors are just as lethal as nuclear weapons and ICBMs. So Palantir is now going to take the step in being a leader in ensuring, okay, is our semiconductor supply chain safe? What happens if we get, like we said, a hurricane comes or a typhoon destroys Taiwan? Meta Constellation is going to be looking up over there. You're going to have to be like, oh my God, we have to move their entire supply chain to Laos, Vietnam, whatever it might be. So that's why I think Athenia and semiconductors, I think, is going to be the biggest surprise. I know everybody's all big on AIP. Again, it's just a part of Foundry. So I think the Athenia platform is really going to start to take off in 24. Specifically in Asia, Taiwan specifically. I think just from an overall U.S. commercial, I think we're going to still continue penetrating. We're going to continue growing. Our top 20 clients at the last Q3, I think they did 53 million in the quarter, if I'm not mistaken. That number will grow. Will it get to 100 million over time? Yes. This quarter, probably not. The only way that will happen in an instant will be through a Uncle Sam contract.
Yeah.
I think the commercial side is in a very, very good place.
So you said you had one international, which was Athenia. What was the one domestic?
I think Athenia combine international and domestically. I still think Apollo is going to be the most important program of the main three, if you will, because Apollo is just going to be used in every day shape and form from a defense side or from a commercial side. Because if you are, I'm trying to think off the top. If you're working for Morgan Stanley, for example, we saw with that foundry, they spent a year getting that down. So if Morgan Stanley has to push, a new software update because the EU makes a new banking regulation, they'll send the software, they'll deploy it via Apollo in the EU offices, and nobody will miss a beat. So, I think that would be my big thing. I think the commercial side, I would love for them to close Berkshire, obviously, because that opens the door to so many enterprises in the US. I just think they need to continue developing relationships, which they're doing. I would like to see Thiel, to be honest, a little bit more out there on a commercial side.
He's been gone for about 2 years. He hasn't talked about Palantir. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you saw him in the HD Hyundai deal. He did make that. That was in 21. I know he's not involved on a quote unquote day-to-day, but I would very much like to see him be a little bit more involved, especially on bigger deals, whether it is in a government or in a commercial space, because I think as an investor, and you might feel differently than me, seeing his face for whatever reason, just reassures me.
Dude,
That,
he's part of the reason a lot of average people bought. They're like, oh, it's Peter Thiel's company. He can't lose. I mean, that's the
correct.
basic thesis a lot of people have. Yeah.
It reassures me that, hey, this guy's involved. He cares. He wants the company to grow. He wants the company to succeed. And I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. Is it going to happen? Maybe he shows his face once. Maybe he doesn't show his face at all. He can do whatever the hell he wants, obviously. But, it's an election year. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how the stock market reacts after such a successful 23, after such a poor 22. And with an election year, it's usually relatively good. The incumbent wants people to vote for him because they're making money in the market. But we'll see. I'd like to see Palantir just close more commercial clients, keep that customer growth going, get back to, 30, 40 would be obviously the ideal. 50 would be of, revenue growth. It's going to happen. But I think after Q1 of 24, because once Titan is finally awarded, I think that is when you're going to see the avalanche of defense and government money come in, because Linchpin is connected to Titan, and Linchpin is all about connecting sensors.